Welcome to Impact the World, a podcast from West Park Baptist Church in Knoxville, Tennessee. This is where we discuss topics related to how we can all love God, love people, and impact the world. Here's your host, Tara Hayes.
Welcome to Impact the World. I am your host, Tara Hayes, and if you haven't been with us in a couple of episodes, we're in the middle of a series that we are highlighting the different ministries that fall under the group of Biblical Support Ministries. A broader umbrella or the foundation of these ministries would be the Biblical Counseling Ministry. So if you go back just one previous episode, we talked all about biblical counseling. If you go to the episode previous to that, we sat down with Pastor Al and talked about Biblical Support Ministries. And these are all ministries that offer hope and help for people who are hurting or are going through a difficult time. And I would say that most every one of these ministries reach outside of the walls of West Park. Actually, probably all of them have an impact in our greater community, not just within the church. So for those of you that might be listening today that aren't currently attending West Park, we're really excited that you're with us. And for those who might not understand Biblical Support Ministries, all of the ministries that fall under that currently would be biblical counseling, DivorceCare, which we're going to talk about today, grief share, renewal, and financial freedom. So these are all ministries that are helping people in difficult spots in their life, and we're giving hope and helping and seeing a lot of wonderful things happen through these ministries. But like I said, today we're going to talk about DivorceCare. And if you haven't heard one of the two previous podcasts or episodes about these ministries, Pastor Al Cage, he is the fearless leader of the Biblical Support Ministries.
Amen.
Hey, Pastor Al.
Good to be here again.
It's really good to have you. And we also have two special guests with us today. We have Larry Cooper, who is the head of the DivorceCare Ministry. He's spearheading it. Whoop, whoop. Yeah. And we also have Amy Larson with us, and her husband both are part of the ministry. So, Larry, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, it's just privileged to be here to discuss this a little bit. DivorceCare is dear to my heart because I went through a divorce. And in fact, all of our facilitators have been through a divorce. I've listened to some of your podcasts, and you mentioned that you were a member of this church for 40 years. And, well, the only thing I could say is 3. So I will tell you, I've been a Christian for over 50 years. Wow. So, but this was dear to my heart because I went through it. And I've actually went through the DivorceCare program as a participant years ago.
So it made a huge impact on your life to the point of, I see that helping people and I want to help people in that way.
That is correct. And what it amounted to was when we joined a church 3 years ago, I looked around to see where I could fit in, where I could serve. And this wasn't a ministry that was active at that time. However, it had been in the past, and so I wanted to be a part of that. And Pastor Al just really picked up the ball on that and encouraged it, and it was great to work with him on it.
Well, if you mentioned to Pastor Al that you want to be involved in any way, he's going to grab you up, and
Amen.
he's going to amen that a lot. But I love that. I love that you saw a need and that you knew through the Lord's guidance you could help fill that. And like I said, and you better be serious about it if you're going to mention it to Pastor Al, because if you even hint, it's too late. You're in hardcore. So it is so great. I know you're very passionate about this ministry and love the people that are a part of it. And we are so glad that you're here and leading this ministry. Okay, next up, Amy Larson.
Hello, I am Amy Larson, and my husband and I both serve as facilitators in DivorceCare. Pastor Al approached us and asked us if we would be a part of this ministry. And I just have to say, Really, Larry has been such an excellent leader in every single way. We have just a great group. We also have Howard Gandy as one of our leaders, and he had been separated but not divorced. And so he is another one of our leaders. And then my husband and I, we were actually separated and divorced for 2 years. And God miraculously reconciled our marriage. And so it's just a pleasure to serve in this ministry and help in any way we can.
Well, I also have to add that Amy and I work together on the communication team. So if we start making jokes, you'll understand why. There's lots of fun had in our office. But I also, because of that, know that this is a ministry that is dear to her heart. And her and Tom really desire to see marriages restored and people brought to Christ. And I get teary about it because I love their story. Yeah. I love their story. And I can't tell you how many times she will call me and say, DivorceCare was such a great meeting tonight. And she'll just say, how people are engaged and, not sharing details, of course.
Yeah,
but
I'm constantly telling her, pray, please pray. We had a great DivorceCare, but there are some really, really hurting hearts. And they just need your prayers. And I know that Tara is one of our prayer warriors. She's also on the prayer team. Plug the prayer team there. But, it's so nice that really all of these ministries are kind of intermingled. I know that Pastor Al's worked really hard to do that with the Biblical Support Ministries. And so it's just nice to have somebody that, again, we don't share details, but say, hey, we had a great DivorceCare. Can you pray for, a woman tonight when you say your prayers?
So I am excited, even though I don't personally have a part in this ministry, I'm excited about what it's doing, and I know it's touching lives. So Pastor Al, could you share with us just a little bit behind the heart behind DivorceCare?
Well, I'll tell you what, I hope already by now, if you're listening to this podcast, especially as you've heard both Amy and Larry talk, you can sense the importance and also the passion behind what we're doing. But you may step back and go, DivorceCare and excited and passion, and say, do those things really fit together? And let me just speak into that a little bit. When I think about the Christian faith, and I think about our Lord Jesus Christ, who took on flesh and left the perfect environment of heaven to come to a sin-cursed world. I think we all recognize that Christ meets us exactly where we are. God's very clear. He hates divorce. But unfortunately, as we travel through this life, that has been touched by the effect of sin, sometimes we just find ourselves in difficult situations. And so to everyone that's listening out there that may be struggling with divorce, maybe have gone through the trauma of divorce, one of the things that we want to do is to meet you where you are and to demonstrate and show the love of Christ in very trying situations. And as a result of that, help you to be able to move on beyond that, not only from the standpoint of restoration, and both Larry and Amy are going to talk about restoration and some of the miracles that they've seen for people who come in broken into this ministry, but they leave completely changed. And that is what we're seeking to do. So, DivorceCare, we hate to even use that word or speak the D word, as we say around here, but we recognize the reality of the situation is many believers, God-fearing people, find themselves touched by this trauma. How can we, as the church, come and walk beside them? And so, as Larry has already spoken to, when the Lord started to move here at West Park, and it became obvious that part of the reason he had the Coopers come to our flock was because of their background and understanding and need for this type of ministry. And it just fit so well in our helping ministries. of what we were trying to build here, a haven, a suite of ministries that could help people work through crises in their lives. And so, again, I want to echo something Amy has already said. Larry's gifted, and how the Lord has equipped him with a unique personality and skill set to pull something like DivorceCare together, and then to launch it, and then to see it become very effective in carrying out its mission. So I just thank God for this team, and quite frankly, I don't know if I'm going to have much to share. I'm just going to sit back and just listen to how God is using this ministry and blessing people through the leaders that He's brought to West Park.
Well, I wanted to kind of draw attention to one thing that you just said about how God hates divorce. Mm-hmm. And I think, unfortunately, many times people in the church or people outside of the church confuse that with hating divorced people. Not hating.
Wow, I understand.
But looking at them with disdain. And they think, well, the church doesn't like divorced people. And that's not true. We are commanded. We love people.
Thank you for bringing that point out.
And, you know, God hates divorce because what it does to people and what it symbolizes. And He hates the sin, but He loves the people that are caught in it or that have made the choice. And so I think that just goes back to these ministries, or helping ministries. We love people that have been divorced. We want to see them restored or brought to a closer relationship with Jesus Christ.
And we live in a culture that basically is moving faster and farther away from God's intent for what should be a lifelong covenant. And so we certainly approach this subject with all seriousness, as it well deserves. Not only in God's eyes, but also in the lives of His people. And again, I'm just excited to hear Amy and Larry talk, because we're talking about DivorceCare, but really that's just the front door. Where we're headed towards is restoration. So again, let me just step back and let the experts go at it.
I would like to make a comment on that because I came from a 33-year-old marriage when I went through a divorce, and I was ashamed of it, and I think a lot of people are when they're in the midst of it. They don't want to share. This isn't a high-profile ministry in the church, because you can't advertise and set up a table, and so we put up a banner and quietly go about registering it on the DivorceCare website so people can seek us out. But everybody that's going through it looks at all the other families around them, their family, immediate family, or the church family, and everything appears healthy and wholesome. But theirs isn't. And so they're covered with shame, and they don't want anybody to know. Some don't want to share even a last name or an address or anything else when they register. And so don't worry, things are kept in a manner that if someone's out there listening today that is interested in pursuing exposure to growing through this difficult season of your life, that we deal with things in a confidential manner, and we're only here to try and help people walk through this and learn how God wants to help them through this, because while we talk about healing or improving relationships, but the first one that has to happen is with God. And that's what DivorceCare works with, is improving relationship with God, becoming a whole person before you move on to another relationship, if that's what you choose.
Yeah, I think that is such a great point, Larry, and something that actually I had talked to Tara in just a previous personal conversation. We have people that come from all walks of life. We have young women, young men, older women, older men, and that's the beauty that we see in our group, that all of these people can come together and heal through God's word together. And we have seen people who come and they have one idea in their mind, like their only idea is, well, I have to have marriage restoration, or I'm coming to this class, maybe, I'll learn how to find another mate. And if this is their goal, we tell them, from the very, very front, from the get-go, this is not the goal of this class. If you are seeking these ideas in your mind, these are idols. And we call it what it is, in a loving way, but show them that why you should be here and the goal of this class is to grow your relationship with the Lord. And I would say 9 times out of 10, I know in my separation and divorce, that's what was missing. My husband and I, we didn't have that united as one, working for Christ. Christ is the center of our relationship. We didn't have that, and therefore it crumbled. And so if you don't have that as the first goal, we try to walk through the very beginning stages of the class to kind of set the stage for expectations. And Larry does such a great job of, here is what this class is, and here is what this class isn't. So I just really appreciate that he, shared that, because it's really important for people to hear that and to know that. So anything else you want to say on that, Larry?
Well, I would like to change direction just a little bit, because the people have been very kind about my contribution to DivorceCare, but we have great facilitators, and Amy leads our group discussion after we watch a video, and it's so important. And we became, this is our 5th series of classes that we're going through right now. And it's become apparent to us early on that Amy was just a natural born leader of that discussion group. And we have more women than men that sign up for this class, so they are more inclined to relate to things that she says. And in light of that, I just wanted people to know that right now we have 3 men and a woman as facilitators, but we have 2 more women that are facilitators in training that are coming through that very well could be participating in the next classes that we have in the spring. And I think it'll help enhance discussion that way. But I would like to add that even though Amy leads a class, leads a discussion, or whatever we're talking about, all the other facilitators have to be tuned in, dialed in, because if there's questions asked and there's too long of a silence and people don't want to contribute or state something, the facilitators all have experiences that we can relate to. While we would like to hear it from the participants, we have our own experiences, so we can carry the conversation so it doesn't get uncomfortable, and it's just a good flow of conversation that people learn from.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the flow and the dynamic, I can't say enough about like the team, and I feel just honored. I know my husband and I both do, to be a part of this, because it is a very difficult situation, as a trauma, like what Pastor Al said, and knowing that there are people separated and divorced that come to our class, knowing that there are personal stories that they can all relate to, because we have, a couple that was separated, never divorced. We have a couple that was divorced and got remarried to each other. And then we have a couple who was divorced and married someone else, and both of them are thriving in their current marriage. And so it's just, we see that dynamic when people come through. There's an ease, I think, and a relatability So like Larry said, while there may be a leader of discussion, everyone is engaged, and it's really important. And we'll see, we just started, actually. We just started 2 weeks ago, and I think, the first night, pretty much no one spoke, I don't think.
Very quiet evening.
Yeah, it was kind of crickets, and Larry and myself and my husband and Howard, we were all kind of looking around like, are people going to talk? Yeah, like, or is this going to be us sharing? But then the next week, we pulled, we carried the conversation, but then the second week, I think there was like that relatability, and we shared stories of the difficulties that we went through and how God carried us through. And when we shared that, they opened up a little bit more. So this week, I think, we won't have to say much of anything. We'll be like Pastor Al over there, just sitting back and letting everybody else talk.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's good for people to understand that they're not going to come in, and on the first night, you're not going to look at them and say, tell me everything about your story.
Right.
What has happened? Whose fault is? I mean, there's none of that. It's getting to know one another and getting comfortable with each other and just learning through the process.
Yeah, it absolutely is. If you do not feel comfortable speaking, you never have to speak. We do not push that. But I do think that, seeing and hearing other people's stories encourages others to start to share their stories as well. And so the group dynamic portion of this, of walking through this step by step, and I'll turn this back over to Larry in a minute, and he can talk about our material, because our material is wonderful. It literally takes people step by step, and each week it builds on top of each other. And I think, people start to understand, okay, they're going through the same thing I am. Because I think there's that, you think in your head, and a lot of times we've heard it so many times, I thought I was the only one. Yeah. People think that they're on an island. They're the only one that's experienced this. And they realize, sin is sin. Like, it is in the world. It has a way of working its way into our lives. And how we respond to that sin and how it affects us is really important.
Well, I think that's a great transition to you talking about the curriculum, Larry, and just what does that look like? Tell us about your curriculum.
This curriculum offers hope. when participants hear our stories of the leaders, they know that, and we're comfortable sharing it. We don't have to get all emotional about it at this point in our lives. It's a fact of our life. It's a fact of our history. It's not who we are, but it's a fact of our history. And when they see that, they know that they could grow to that. Yes. Then they can see hope, light at the end of the tunnel. So I would like to just cover a few of the topics. We don't have to look at all of them, but just topics like the one we're going to cover this coming week is anger. And there's so much anger built up in people because they feel so betrayed. Sometimes they're the betrayer and they're angry at themselves, because we're not only dealing with people that have lost a marriage because of their spouse's choice. They may have made that choice. And that's a really interesting perspective and dynamic that goes on in our class sometimes. As you hear those ideas shared back and forth, it helps you have empathy for maybe your spouse who's leaving you, because now you're talking with somebody and they're relaying how their perspective is.
How they ended up there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that you brought that up, because I think so many times we're thinking of it as something that's happened to me, but the fact that, your spouse, you may be the person that said, I'm the one that's choosing to get the divorce or
That's
to separate.
correct.
I'm glad that you brought that up.
At any rate, that's one of the topics, but another one that people go through is grief. And it's so discouraging, and it's like a death in the relationship. It is a death of the relationship, but it's a death in the family. The only difference is that this person doesn't go away, because there's still holidays. There's family gatherings that take place that we actually address those issues. Once you get through the grieving process, you still have to deal with family, establishing new relationships. You have to deal with single financing. Single people have to deal with their own financing, and sometimes that means taking care of children themselves and just getting, some support from the other party, but it's still a real challenge to maintain two households instead of one.
It's a whole new life at a time where they weren't really planning on having to have a new life, so to speak.
Yep. Yeah, and on top of that, at some point, if you're going to grow whole, completely whole, you have to get over anger, and you have to seek forgiveness for yourself, seek forgiveness for the party that left, and whether that be you or the other person, and just resolve to accept the fact that God's capable of forgiving us if we're willing to accept that. And
Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I mean, all of the subjects that Larry just pointed to are really some of our hardest discussions, but we see people come through this class on week 1, and then by week 14, they are completely transformed. And I think that's the where we talk about we're passionate and we're joyful to be a part of this. That's where the joy comes in seeing those transformations take place, and knowing that God is using us and our stories, to help people walk through this time. And so the workbook that we have is phenomenal. There is on my own sections that they have to go through every single day, loaded with scripture and encouragement. It's just so helpful. And we find, again, Larry says, you don't have to do this, but if you want to grow in your relationship with the Lord and you want to get more out of this class, we highly encourage you to do this, because it brings more to the table. It sometimes brings a completely different perspective, and sometimes that's what people need. It's not that their situation is going to change, but their perspective on how they're going to react and handle the situation is usually what changes.
If I could just jump in there, I think two of the critical aspects of people who are going through crisis need to understand is this: that God will use people and circumstances to show them what's going on in their heart. And so, Larry, as you said earlier, one of the key aspects of pillars of the ministry is to help people assess their relationship with God. As God is working in their life for restoration and equipping them to be able to move on in a healthy manner, He really wants them to understand your response to people and circumstances. That's critical, because you can't control people, and we can't control circumstances.
No, we cannot.
All we can do is, how do we respond? And the critical issue is to get believers to understand that their ultimate goal in life is to please God. And so as we look at these circumstances and the people that we're dealing with, a question should always be hanging in the back of your mind. All right, Lord, how do I respond in this difficult situation in a manner that pleases you? And quite frankly, we all need some help in doing that. I'm hearing a big amen in the background here. And
Yes.
Somebody's pointing the finger at me. I don't understand that. But that's what we've got to do.
Yeah, I think one other aspect along those lines that's really helpful to kind of hit that point home are our videos. And while, Larry and I and Howard and Tommy can maybe facilitate and lead, we truly are just facilitators. We have experts. DivorceCare is made up of a panel of experts. They bring video discussions and real life scenarios, real life people that they've interviewed, that people that have gone through DivorceCare, how it's affected them, how it's helped them. And so not only do they have stories, from our perspective, but they have panels of experts leading that discussion, and then also other people that have been through DivorceCare speaking to those points. So I would say probably the video discussions are, I don't know how they could be any better. Would you agree with that, Larry?
Yeah, because they're real life situations. These people have all dealt with the same issues that the participants in class are dealing with. I would like to just back up for a minute and talk about growth, because we mentioned that people grow going through this 14-week series. It's not something that you can really easily measure. And we had an instance last class series where someone came in at like week 10, and they were really distraught, and it was really interesting to see how the class gathered around this person in their discussion, the way they talked to him and supported that person, and it was like, wow, they really are getting it. We just sit back and watch this because, a topic would come up and they'd start talking about their experiences and how they were working through it, and it's like, wow, they really are growing, and
it's working.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. I think we all, all of the facilitators, we don't make any kind of, faces or gestures at each other that, I think others would notice, but we have been around each other enough and we know each other enough that I'm like looking at Larry's looking at Tommy, and we're all like, what's happening? This is wonderful. But I think this is just another expression of exactly how well built this ministry is, and truly how it's a reflection of how the church should operate, where there is love and support. We bear one another's burdens. So this is just kind of another reflection of that.
Wow. I love that, because it goes back to, we've talked about these being helping ministries. And so as you see that growth, I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, even to piggyback off of that, Tara, is that they are helping ministries. We like to describe these ministries as not cul-de-sacs. They're not places where people come and you park and you stay. These are places where they're more like intersections, or maybe even a speed bump is a more appropriate analogy. You come down the highway of life, and you hit a barrier, and you just need something to help you get over that barrier so that you can move on. And I know you guys face the same issue in DivorceCare as we do with several of our other ministries. Because these ministries are so impactful and so helpful, sometimes it's hard to get people to just move on. And again, that's where the tie into the local church is so important. We need to build healthy local churches so that as people experience this restoration and healing, that they're able to go on with life and to partner with other churches to continue their growth in the Lord.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because our class is somewhat unique. It's called a hybrid class. So we offer an online portion of this class. They participate with our in-class participants, but we've had some from Missouri, from Kentucky. Got one joining this week that we anticipate coming from Virginia. We got one that's going to be a part of our class. She'll be local, at some point, but right now she lives in Illinois. And we welcome those, and we want that to be a part of this. And I would like to also help people understand that this, while we talk about being part of the church, and you may feel like, well, if I'm not a believer, this is not for me. And that's not true. You can gain a lot from our class, even if you've not been a believer, not in church anywhere. You can come and you can learn either online or in class, and there's a lot of benefits if you get to know the Lord, but you can also benefit from this class without it.
Yeah, and also, I'm glad that Larry brought up that point, because while we do have members of our church that have come through DivorceCare class, we really reach far beyond our physical church doors. This is a ministry that we offer to the community. As Larry said, it's now, not just within our
national.
Yeah, we're national now. So maybe we'll have international. No, let's not get crazy. Yeah, can you imagine doing that time difference? Yeah. But it is exciting to see the people that are both in class and online. And I just have to say, we have had amazing participation online. Some of the participants that have been our online people have participated, even sometimes more than those in class. And we've even continued, friendships with those people even after they have finished the class and moved on, and maybe even, in a different state. So it's a beautiful picture of how I see God just, growing our community, and not just within our little, Knoxville community, but the church as a whole.
Yeah. The universal church, we would say. And I think that's neat. I mean, there are so many hurting people everywhere, and God is using this ministry to draw them to Him all over the place, not just in Knoxville. And it's exciting to see that happening all over the country. I can't believe how many different states you have represented. You need to keep a map and just start marking them. Maybe we can hit all 50 one day. Yeah. That'd be fun.
Actually, I would like to have our class dwindle down through a lack of need.
That's even better.
Yeah.
But if there's that need, you're right, then I would love to see it spread.
And I love to hear Larry express that sentiment. And I'm sure that our God above grieves when He sees the hurt that sin causes in the life of His beloved. And so, our ultimate goal is that the Lord would come and all of this misery would end.
Amen.
But we all recognize again, and I think we said this at the very beginning of our podcast, we recognize that this is a sin-cursed world. And as long as the Lord elects to tarry and not come back, we're going to stay on the battlefield, working for Him and using the gifts, the talents, but I think most importantly, the heart of love that you will sense the moment you become engaged with this ministry. You will sense the love. And I think that just has a contagious effect. It just won't let you stay there in misery. You're going to see that spark of light in the midst of some very dark times.
Yes.
And just praise God that He's given you the opportunity to join in with this ministry. So we do extend a heartfelt invitation to everyone that's out there. If you know of someone that's out there that's struggling, point them our way. We would love to be part of God's plan of reaching out to them.
And along those lines, just because class started 2 weeks ago, and tomorrow night we have our third class, we take people at any stage going through these classes, and then they can go ahead and know that register for the next class and they can just finish up or just go through the class again completely. But so they can start at any point and they start hearing and get acclimated to the message that we're trying to bring across.
I think that's been a fantastic overview of what divorce care is and the heart for divorce care. And if either of you, Larry or Amy, don't have anything else to say, that's the perfect segue into what does this look like. So we've talked about you meet for 14 weeks, and how many times a year does that happen?
We do it twice, one in the fall and one in the spring. So this current class will finish a couple weeks before Thanksgiving. And then we'll be looking at starting the next class in early February.
And that's typically how this runs.
Yeah.
Fall and spring. So if anybody's interested, do either of you have anything else you want to add? I mean, this has been such a fantastic discussion about divorce care.
Okay, well, since they've talked all this time, I can jump in and,
Here we go.
and give my sermon for the
Are
day.
you ready for 30 more minutes? I'm just kidding, Pastor Al.
Oh, you really didn't have anything else?
I'll
Okay.
pass.
Oh, come on.
Pastor,
You're not at a
always-
loss for words. I've heard that.
Listen, come on. I know that's true. Larry's
Well,
right.
I will say, again, let me just put that appeal out to anyone that's listening. Don't stay in this dark spot by yourself. We are here to help. Just call our church office, look at our website, but know that we're here to help. Let us do that for you.
Yes, we like to end the podcast with a kind of an impact statement, and I think that's it. I think the hope for everyone that's involved in divorce care, the impact that it would have, that it would draw people in that are in a dark place or that are struggling, that they would see change in their lives, true change, starting with their heart, and that restoration, at the very least, would be made with their relationship with the Lord if that needs to happen. Mm-hmm. And I think, I don't know how you could ask really for more. I mean, but if either of you have an impact statement that you would like to add, feel free.
Well, I would like to say that the opportunity for reconciliation is strongly encouraged, but we know it's not always possible or realistic or even safe. But for those that it works, it's a beautiful thing to see restoration take place in a marriage. But if that's not, restoration with the Lord is wonderful, and it just points people to a much healthier life after that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's also really important for people to understand, and Larry kind of said this earlier, but this is a part of your story. Divorce doesn't define who you are. It doesn't have to define who you are. And so we really, we couldn't encourage you more to come be a part, participate. If you have friends or family members that need this ministry, we welcome them with open arms. We also have Awana for children. There is a certain age range, but we purposely planned this because we know there's a lot of single parents and they're not going to have childcare. And so we wanted to provide a safe place for children to come. And while we're encouraging, parents, mothers, and fathers in the Lord, their children will be encouraged in the Lord as well. And so it really is just an overall wonderful space to come and to start that healing process.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Amy, because it meets on Wednesday nights and it starts at 6:30. And I know, I was like, we should probably say, no, it's fine. We should probably mention it's Wednesday nights at 6:30 and to 8.
Yes.
6:30 to 8. And there are ways, like Amy said, if you have children, there's a space for them too. And this is just, it's an exciting ministry that we're passionate about. And so if you're listening, or if, like Pastor Al said, you know somebody that needs to be involved in this ministry, reach out to us. You can get on our website, westparkbaptist.org/divorcecare. You can call the church, 865-690-0031.
Or they
Yeah.
can actually find us on the DivorceCare website too,
Okay.
that way.
Yes. So, like I said, we would love to talk with you. We would love to get you involved, and we would love to be a part of your lives and for you to be a part of West Park. Thanks again for listening today. This has been a great discussion, you all. I've really enjoyed this.
I do have a sermon. You sure you don't want me to do
Yeah,
this?
we'll get you another time, Pastor Al. And maybe sometime in the future we can sit down and talk some more about DivorceCare and hear even more about what God's doing in that ministry. But thanks again for being with us today, you all. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Impact the World. To find out more about West Park Baptist Church in Knoxville, Tennessee, visit westparkbaptist.org.